Dr. Adoye Matthew Omale is of the Department of Diplomacy and International Relations, based University, also based here in Abuja. Dr. Omale, pleasure to have you this
morning. Good
morning.
morning.
Thank you.
And also joining us from the United Kingdom via Zoom is Paul Ejime, International Affairs Analyst. Glad to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
All right, so let's begin the conversation in-house. Let's say charity beginning with us right here at home before we go over to Paul Ejime. Gentlemen, the Accra summit of ECOWAS leaders, of course, ended with a number of resolutions. The eco currency is there, the issue of insecurity, resuscitating the Council of the Wise, now headed by Goodluck Jonathan. But more importantly, seeking to restructure the number of commissioners from 15 to 17. I would like first to just have an overview from Ambassador Bulus Lolo in terms of the resolutions that emerged from that summit at the weekend. Do you think that these matters faithfully implemented that will lead to a rejuvenated ECOWAS?
Yes, and thank you very much. The recently concluded summit in Accra, in my view, is one of the most robust summits that ECOWAS has had in recent times, not least because of the restructuring, as you said, of the Commission. But more importantly, the direction of the world today is such that you need an ECOWAS that is lean, an ECOWAS that is efficient, and an ECOWAS that can respond on the march to issues as they emerge. And in our sub-region, we have Mali to contend with, we have Burkina Faso, and other spots that we cannot take our eyes from. And so if in Accra a decision was taken, and of course the mandate given to the former President Goodluck Jonathan to head the Council of the Wise, it is because that is a mechanism that is much needed as an early warning mechanism to help in managing conflict situations in the sub-region. And the Council of the Wise, by its own intent, is to help the Commission and the Authority of Heads of State itself with counsel on a number of issues. You talked about insecurity, and I know the Ministerial Council too on the Security Council met, as well as looking at the whole issue today of can we be more integrated when in every little section of the sub-region you go, you have pockets of tension that are rearing their ugly heads, largely because of the management of our political processes and how we do things to address the well-being of the people. And so if you look at and on balance what was the outcome of Accra, one must hold one's head high. And if you are a Nigerian in that case, as we are, we should be proud too that this was a showing that Nigeria showed its leadership and got what it demanded out of Accra.
Okay, thank you so much, Ambassador Lalo. Let me come to Lolo. Let's come to Dr. Adoye Matthew Omale. He said robust, incisive, and almost definitive reforms in the sub-region. Mali was on the front border all through, you know, with suspensions, but not sanctions here, even with the civilian prime minister. What's your take on that?
Okay, on the issue of Mali, first of all, let me join Ambassador Lolo to commend ECOWAS leaders for this summit that held in Accra. The summit, for a very long time, ECOWAS has been very comatose and docile. Reading through the communique at the end of that meeting shows that they are beginning to wake up from the slumber. ECOWAS has been dogged by a lot of challenges, reading through the communique, it gives hope that at least for once they are beginning to put the issues on the front burner of discourse within the sub-region. On the issue of Mali, A threat anywhere is a threat to everybody. And it is clear that all the gains that was achieved in the last 20 years in terms of democratizing the sub-region is almost is rearing, military intervention is rearing its ugly head. Our political instability is beginning to crop into the sub-region. Look at the case that happened in Niger after the election. If it were not God intervention, something. Look at the case of Cote d'Ivoire when Alassane Ouattara won the election. Look at the case of Gambia when Yahya Jammeh lost election. So instability was beginning to crop in, and the leaders have to take this type of proactive measures by instituting the Council of the Wise to intervene by activating preventive diplomacy, as the case may be. So I think it's a proactive step. But the problem now is, having said this in a communique, in terms of actual implementation, what happens? You could see from the communique, members are not contributing as they should contribute to the funds of the ECOWAS, in as much as they have set up committees to try and encourage countries to make their contribution. ECOWAS cannot function without the needed funds. Most of the activities, even the Council of the Wise, they cannot function if they don't have the funding to move around, do their research, do shuttle diplomacy, interact with all the contending groups, and so on and so forth. So it's a very big challenge. And then, like most of us, most of Africa, where we keep on creating, duplicating. You know, if you look at the ECOWAS structure, there are lots of duplication. There are lots of groups that have been put on ground, even outside the main commission of 17 that is being streamlined. There are several other.
Can you specify?
Yes, you have a peace and conflict resolution committee, while you have the committee, the commission on political and social change. You have other committees within crisis intervention group of ECOWAS. You have other committees at the level of the commission, and so there are lots of and all these things there's no fund to fund most of these programs, and it's not taking a lot of programs that matter. You could just, if ECOWAS is facing economic integration, for example, in the next 5 years, we finish with economic integration. If it's security challenges, but they seem to take so many things at a time, and then before you know it, like if you look at the communique, a critical analysis of the communique will show you that so many issues, and it will be too much for them to implement. In the case of the ECHO, it has been there for a very long time. It has been there for more than, it was supposed to take off in 2020. It couldn't take off. Now they are projecting 2027. The division between, and one of the things that the communique didn't address is the latest division between the francophone and anglophone countries. That bridge between the two is not there. Some of the anglophone countries went to Macron and started announcing taking off of ECHO. That compromised the sovereignty of West Africa, because only them, and they are still tying the West African economy to France. Because you know, when I watched that thing on television, I was seriously touched, because okay, sir.
All right, Dr. Omale, thank you very much. Well, of course, we'll get into the details of some of those key issues, including the eco currency that you just mentioned. Let's go over now to Paul Ejime, who is with us via Zoom. You can see him there on the right side of your screen. Paul, of course, you are an expert on ECOWAS issues. In your opinion, is the outcome of the Accra summit potentially a game changer for the regional body?
Well, I think let me join the ambassador and Dr. Mali in saying, well, there is for a change for over some time. This is a good a good one because, like he said, it appears that reality is dawning on those who are in charge of ECOWAS. That this is an organization that held up a lot of hope of all the region, what they call the regional economic communities, the RECs in Africa. ECOWAS was a trailblazer in the way it handled conflict management and resolution, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and all that. To the point that, well, it's more known for for that security issue than for the core agenda of fostering economic integration. But they are all also intertwined. You can't have economic progress where there is no peace. So back to what happened. You have all summarized it. The collapsing or bringing the commission now to a 7-member one, 5 commissioners plus the president and then the vice president. It's been there. And what has happened is that when ECOWAS became a commission in 2007 from an executive secretariat, it had 9. The idea was to have 7 commissioners and then the president and vice president. But suddenly, every member wanted to have a commissioner for a 15-member organization. It is not so at the AU. It is not so at the EU. So how they came about that is still baffling. But now they are beginning to realize that it was a bad decision because this is a period where you need to achieve more with less. The money, even if it was you had all the limited resources, you have to manage it. But before we begin to celebrate too much about bringing it to 7, the devil, they say, is in the details. You need now to go and have, because the head matters. ECOWAS, apart from this, there is what they call the rotational issue, going by alphabetical order or zoning. That has not helped. I think they have to move forward now to look for for people who with competence, with vision, like AU. They involve external consultants to be able to get somebody who has a track record that can, particularly for the presidency of the commission, because who is the driver? He's the man that will sit on at the wheel and do things. You can begin to do things with the other ones about commissioners, but for the presidency, they have to go beyond just making it a 5 or 7-member commission to now bring somebody ahead that is not malleable, that is not afraid to take decisions because they are always referencing to their presidents instead of to the commission. Allegiance should not be to the country where you come from. It has to be for the community. Almost 400 million citizens in that community. They are. You can see what is happening. The index, the development index, shows that ECOWAS, members are suffering. Poverty rate is members is high. Insecurity is another thing. Unemployment and crime. So you need to now go back and have people who are ready, not just brought by their heads, nominated by their heads of state. Yes, you can do that. The country can, but make it competitive so that you get somebody who the best. That is what you need. Otherwise, ECOWAS, like Dr. Mala was saying, talked about comatose, talked about recession of democracy. Look at the elections that have been conducted over the years. For the past 10 years, ECOWAS has been in decline, and now risks losing its relevance. I think this bringing it to 7, a lean, effective, efficient management with somebody at the top, the leadership that is dynamic, visionary, and then knows about the integration, knows about taking decisions, being proactive. It is not because if you want to take any decision, you reference your head of state that no. We know it is an intergovernmental organization, but there is you have gone beyond your national to get to what you call subnational. You are now at the head. You can take decisions. It used to be so. It hasn't been so in the last 10 years. I think they have to go back there if they are going to be able to crack the challenges that are facing them. There is health, COVID, insecurity. There is a maritime problem, Gulf of Guinea. They mentioned that in the communique. ECHO, they have mentioned that. It is also that lack of political will that has allowed France almost hijacking what a project, a single currency. You cannot have integration without single currency or monetary union. So it behoves the countries to move forward and move ahead. There has been so many postponements. If you don't wait for everybody to get on board, let those who are ready move on, those who can get the convergence criteria that is required. Otherwise, and look at the way Mali is being handled. It is that lack of, political will and commitment. And then, sitting on the fence, that has allowed the military to now, if care is not taken, military will come back to and interfere. In Mali, the military is actually running the show. ECOWAS is just sitting on the fringe. They talked about having a civilian-led transition government. But what do we have? Colonel Goita, after becoming vice president, has taken over. And the military has about 4 key positions in the Malian transition government: defense, security, regional administration, and then reconciliation. So the others are just playing second fiddle. And then the resuscitation of the Council of the Wise. It used to be Council of Elders. It is all part of a way of, trying to nip conflicts in the bud before it becomes, before they escalate. Look at Africa. We used to have that. When things are going wrong, elders and leaders of community will sit down and try to settle disputes. But we've forgotten that we are going for the modern one that does not suit the African system. We need to, even in Mali, they used to have what they call Toguna. Toguna is men sitting under the hut and then being able to discuss and resolve issues.
Okay.
But key to this is governance. You have to deliver justice and then inclusivity. Let me stop here for now.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul Ejima. You've raised a cocktail of issues. We will, of course, return to you in the course of the conversation. Juma, I just want to bring in Ambassador Bulus Lolo again, because one sore point that we keep hearing about ECOWAS as an international institution has to do with the level of funding and therefore commitment by a number of states. Indeed, the rationale for seeking to slash the number of commissioners from 15 to 7 has to do with funding. I understand that Nigeria has been a principal funder of ECOWAS. Why does Nigeria take on this huge responsibility of funding ECOWAS? And as a corollary to that question, why do other members of ECOWAS not put their money where their mouth is?
Well, again, thank you, and I can understand why everyone is talking about the number of issues that concern ECOWAS. First, let me clarify that ECOWAS, at its inception, was supposed to be focused on economic development. Since 1975, when ECOWAS came into being, much as it was intended to be an economic organization, its preoccupation, if you look at the balance of issues, has been more on political issues than economic. And then to your direct question on why Nigeria is funding or bearing the largest share of the budget, first, you do have scale of assessment. This applies at the United Nations, in the African Union, and then here in ECOWAS, based on your economic might, and where then your income level is at a certain threshold, it is expected that you will pay a percentage. And it translates in the case of ECOWAS that Nigeria bears up to 65% or even more of the ECOWAS budget. Now, if there are issues about other member states not contributing, it is a function of a number of factors, either because they are not committed to the organization or they simply do not want to bear their responsibility. And this is the area where in 2013 or 14, when the commission was increased from 9 to 15, I remember then I was in Ethiopia and I felt horrified because I felt that Nigeria failed in that instance, because you cannot give each and every country, including countries that pay less than 2% of the budget, a post of commissioner that is even more when it comes to the income and the cost of maintaining that commissioner would be higher than the amount that the country was contributing to the commission. But it's not peculiar to ECOWAS. Even the UN is not immune to funding issues. It's just that the scale of it is different. The African Union is dogged by the same malaise of poor funding. In fact, if you go to the African Union, about 98% of the program budget of the African Union is funded by external partners. Contribution by member states is barely 2%. Now, how do you demonstrate your commitment? How do you demonstrate ownership? How do you want to exercise your sovereignty if you don't put your heart where your mouth is? With ECOWAS, and I pray that with this restructuring, Nigeria will look deep into how the resources are managed. Will look also into how services are delivered, so that not only because ECOWAS is headquartered in Nigeria, but more because Nigeria is the largest contributor to the ECOWAS budget, we need to dictate the direction of ECOWAS. And when you put your money as an investment, you expect some benefits to come to you. There have to be tangible benefits that come to Nigeria and Nigerians for what we are doing in ECOWAS. And I hope that not just government, but ordinary Nigerians will take an interest to see and know whether or not ECOWAS is serving their interest. But, as Dr. Ejime said, ECOWAS is Africa's foremost regional economic community. It is also the largest. It has the largest market on the continent. There is great potential in ECOWAS, but that potential will have to be tapped, as well then as let the owners of these potentials guard them jealously. If not, I'll use the word vultures, but in an advised manner. By vultures, I mean people who don't kill, but they like to eat. That's what I mean.
Scavengers.
Scavengers, indeed. Ambassador Lolo, I will be staying with you for a bit. Dr. Omale raised a very fundamental issue. He said the ECOWAS used to be, you know, sort of docile, but now in this Accra summit, it's like they're being more proactive. But what he's talking about is the communique is so loaded. Implementation is key. As we continue to play the big brother role in Nigeria, we fund them, but the respect isn't there.
You'll excuse me if I keep going back to what I know by saying, take even UN resolutions at every session. In fact, member states, and this is the fault of governments, tend to adopt more resolutions than they have the capacity to implement. So if you find the ECOWAS resolutions out of Accra to be loaded, they are hardly new. They are carryover from previous discussions. Twice a year, ECOWAS meets. Now, the president of the commission is expected and normally renders a report every 6 months to the commission. But it's one thing to agree on a document, but it's another entirely to carry it through. And this is where accountability comes to play. For me, I would love to see us having that capacity and capability to assess productivity and equally monitor and evaluate results, so that it's not just sitting to say today you are setting up this body or that other commission, but to see whether or not you have the ability to follow through. And that's why the many resolutions that have been adopted, just like policies in this country, were they to have been fully and effectively implemented, we would not be where we are. So in a nutshell, if I've answered your question, it is simply to say that we adopt more and our ambition is higher than our strength, and that needs to be checked. And I do hope that it is this lean commission now that will lead us in that direction. You don't have to put your finger in every little hole there is, but press and block a particular hole that threatens you the most.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Bulus Lolo. Let's bring in again Dr. Adoye Omale. Dr. Omale, that's a point that I would like us to clarify, because you also, in a sense, you were referencing that, and it was amplified by Paul Ejime. And Ejime says that ECOWAS is in decline, that in the last 10 years we have seen how contentious issues have tended to overrun a number of member states. And I was just wondering whether that in fact mirrors the reality. Because yes, there was crisis in the Gambia following the elections, but ECOWAS intervened, and President Muhammadu Buhari, of course, took the lead in that regard, and Yahya Jammeh had no option but to go into exile. And we also saw what happened in Burkina Faso. Blaise Compaoré was on the verge of setting that country ablaze, and some soft landing was arranged for him. Well, Mali has been intractable for a number of years. It remains a sore point, no question about that. But if you look elsewhere around West Africa, in terms of political stability now, not the issue of insecurity, will it be a fair assessment to say that ECOWAS has been in decline?
Well, you know, when we talk about political instability, it's not only about regime change. We are talking about conduct of elections in most of the West African states, even where democracy exists. The quality of democratic elections within the sub-region has always been a source of dispute, especially to a lot of scholars. If you look at take for example the elections in Niger Republic. If you look at the contending issues, yes, the sitting president lost, like in Nigeria, and there were issues as a result of the election. But what are the quality of the elections? Are they deploying IT technology in most of the elections that is conducted within the sub-region? Are the electoral commissions independent? Issue of good governance within the sub-region. Those are some of the issues that are causing this instability. Issues of good governance, issues of credible elections, and ECOWAS being a body at that level should be in the forefront of ensuring that these processes within the sub-region will create a lot of stability. So stability is not only in the area of regime change. There will be more stability if the processes of governance are very credible. If a lot of reforms within the sub-region and with ECOWAS leading the charge, But when we say ECOWAS is docile, is that most of these things are happening, and ECOWAS is not. Yes, they create a lot of studies, ECOWAS Good Governance Project, and so on and so forth at the level of the ECOWAS. But are those resolutions being implemented? Are this monitoring mechanism put in place? I know that under the AU they had the NEPAD and the African peer review mechanism. Are we peer reviewing what we are doing within the ECOWAS system? Are we telling ourselves, look, gentlemen, what is happening in your country is not right. It's affecting all of us in the sub-region. Can you amend this? Can you amend that? So those things are not there. And that's the role ECOWAS is supposed to play to enhance the stability. Yes, when crisis bursts out, they will institute a committee of the wise who will go and intervene and so on and so forth. But we want, what the argument is that for there to be stability, you have to get your good governance right in most of the countries. For there to be stability, you have to tackle corruption holistically.
But there are still national sovereign responsibilities, so that a supranational entity such as ECOWAS cannot pretend to be running the affairs of its individual member states.
It cannot, but you see, issues of, for example, what are the issues that create instability? Discontentment of the people. ECOWAS should be concerned about that. It's not that you are running. It's about you are putting the issues, just like the United Nations, you are putting the issues in the front burner. You are taking proactive steps. You are using preventive diplomacy. You are not reacting after the crisis begins. You are putting proactive, fundamental issues on the ground. Okay, look at issues of light weapons. Even the internal crisis we are having, movement of persons, they have not even sat down to review. Based on the crisis they are having in Nigeria and some of these countries, how can ECOWAS now look at this document again and review these things so that the free movement of persons will not be abused by people who are moving around the sub-region and creating instability within the sub-region? What can be put on ground that can mop up light weapons? Yes, there was a committee in ECOWAS that was mopping up light weapons and small arms. How effective have those committees work in mopping up these light weapons and small arms? So they are not carrying an assessment of even policies that are on ground. They are not evaluating, they are not reviewing. That's why we say they are docile. Ideally, what happens is that there's no enough intellectual input and capacity within the system to say, look, this is where we are, this is where we are going, this is where we want to be in the next 20, 30 years. That's why we are talking about this issue of docility.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Omale. Let's join Paul Ejime. Paul Ejime, security is a very huge problem in most parts of ECOWAS, and the body approved the security plan in September 2019. But almost 2 years after, members have still been urged to implement. The AU at its last sitting, the theme was silencing the guns. And how do we prevent all this security, from happening in our region, and the small arms and light weapons proliferation into our region? Insecurity is the high point, because when we look at the Africa Free Trade Agreement that is just getting off, if there's no security in the sub-region, how do we align ourselves with the profit that we can get from the after?
Yes, that is at the heart of, you cannot have economic progress or development when you do not have security or peace. And that is why you have both are, interrelated, symbiotic. What has happened, I would like us to look at it from two levels, the micro and the macro. That is, national members at their level will have to play a role to make their own boundaries, their own territory peaceful. And then you now extrapolate that and get members, your neighbors, and then get the regional organization. Because if an organization is as strong as its weakest member, so you cannot say you are isolated or you are living on an island. No, even when you think things are going well, you also have to look beyond you to see, because what happens? We are Africans. We live community life. What happens in Ghana, can affect the neighbors. In fact, the world is a village. That so you cannot sleep when your neighbor's house is on fire. So these are the levels. At the national level, elections, like we said, there are drivers and triggers of this insecurity or conflict that we're talking about. It comes from governance at all levels, economic, political. What government is about? It is about the welfare of the people, about ensuring respect for human rights, about their well-being. Something like employment, something like social. You notice that some of our Africans, even though we have our people servicing or manning the health systems in other climes, the health system in our region is weak, and